Sato ma Sadgamaya Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from darkness unto light, lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. Namaste, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to this series of Shankara Vyakhyana Mala. I'm grateful to the organizers for inviting me to speak. The subject for this talk is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, expression of oneness. In this talk, I propose to explore the Advaitic foundations of this central thought, the central feature of Indian thought and culture. I have this book, I came across it recently. It's called Oneness and by Jeffrey Moses. They have just collected the great principles regarding oneness of all human beings from different religions. But the very first sentence, when it starts, the first sentence is, throughout the ages, the scriptures of all religions have proclaimed that humanity is one great family. And then later on, he clarifies that it is actually from Hinduism that we get this idea. This great thought. On page 12, Jeffrey Moses quotes, "The world is my family," says the Maha Upanishad, a Vedic text of Hinduism with an oral tradition dating back more than 6,000 years. So that great sentiment, that great thought that the world is one family, that is the theme for our discussion today. The original text, which you find in the Upanishads, is this. Ayam bandhurayam neti ganana laghuchetasam udara charitanam tu vasudhaiva kutumbakam. So these are my relatives and these are not my relatives. Such is the thought of petty people. But for Udara Charita, for the people who are truly liberal, truly universal, truly wise, for them, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, all beings, they're not just human beings, all sentient beings in the entire world, they are all my relatives. They are all mine. Nobody is an other to me. And the text goes on to state, Esha Brahmi Sthiti Swachha Nishkama Vigata Maya Adaya Viharan Evam Sankateshu Namuhyati. Meaning thereby, this is the state of enlightenment after realizing Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi. After realizing that, one stays in this state and then moves around in the world, is engaged. Viharan. Viharan means engaged in activities. It's not that you have to withdraw to a mountain top or in a monastery and you have nothing more to do with the world. Not at all. Fully engaged with in all activities, but nishkama, without any greed, without any desire, worldly desire. Swachha, with pure mind, with a pure antahkarana. This is Brahmi Sthiti. Sankateshu namuhyati. Whatever danger comes, whatever sorrow comes after that, due to our past karma, the Jivan Mukta is also subject to that, but internally, one is not deluded, one is not shaken by the ups and downs of life. It's a very interesting the consequence, result. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, if you realize that, what will be the result for your own sake? That you will be this kind of a person whose very existence is blessed and who is a blessing to the world and remains serene and calm and unmoved in spite of the greatest sorrows. So in our times today, the times we are living in today, it's a wonderful text. Also note that it is a Vedantic text. It is often quoted, but it is a quotation from the Upanishads. And Vedanta is nothing but the Upanishads. Vedanta Nama Upanishad Pramanam. Vedanta is defined as the source of spiritual knowledge called the Upanishads. What I propose today is that we shall explore this key idea of Indian culture. I was reading that it is actually inscribed on the gates of the Parliament of India, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So, this key idea of Indian culture, we shall explore it philosophically from the perspective of Advaita Vedanta. Swami Vivekananda once said that Advaita Vedanta has these two central tenets, two fundamental teachings. That is the whole of Advaita Vedanta. What is this? One is the divinity of the individual, that our real nature is divine. And the second one is the oneness of all existence, that the whole world, the entire universe is one existence. So two things, divinity and oneness of existence. We normally think of ourselves as these mortal beings. And the Upanishads, Vedanta comes and tells us, no, you are mistaken. Your real nature is divine. We also think of ourselves as separated. I and others, subject and object. I and mine. I and these people are my family, my relatives, and the others, they are separate from me. They are not mine. The Upanishad is telling us just the opposite. Swami Vivekananda says, Vedanta is telling us, actually, if we investigate, we will find oneness, not difference. Difference on the surface, oneness in a more profound, fundamental sense. Humanity, mortality on the surface, flesh and blood, body, mind on the surface. When we investigate deeper, then we find that this divinity. But what does it mean when you say that we are divine? It's a nice thing to say, but in what sense? What is the exact meaning of divinity? And how can we discover that? And what will be the result of that? How will our lives change and benefit from that discovery? Again, oneness. We are constantly experiencing difference. It is nice to say that we are one, but in what sense? Are we simply to believe that? Are we supposed to imagine that? Are we supposed to practice it? But what is the reality? The reality seems to be difference. How is oneness the reality? How is difference and appearance? How is mortality and appearance and immortality? The divinity is a reality. That is what we shall investigate in today's discussion. The ancient rishis, from whom came such texts as the Upanishads, where we get Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, they investigated human nature. They asked the question, who am I or what am I? The obvious answer, they disregarded that and went deeper. They examined it. That are we only bodies? We seem to be bodies. Are we only the minds and persons or something deeper? And they investigated. And in this investigation, they found underlying our body mind complex a consciousness, an awareness, an existence which is immortal. Body is changing, mind is changing, this unchanging existence is there, which is not normally known to us. It is right there, right now, but we do not notice it. So this was brought to our notice by these great rishis. In the Kena Upanishad, again, thousands of years old, we find the Upanishad is starting with this question. Keneshitam patati preshitam mana, kena prana prathama praiti yukta, keneshitam vachamimam vadanti, chakshu shrotram kaudeva yunakti. By what, impelled by what, do we think thoughts? We are constantly having thoughts, good and bad. These thoughts, memories, desires, understanding, lack of understanding, all the thoughts which are coming in our mind, all of these impelled by what? From what source? What is shining and making them happen? Impelled by what do we utter? Do we have the experience of speaking? We utter these words. What is behind our experience of seeing? What is behind our experience of hearing and smelling and tasting and touching? So all our conscious experiences, our life is made of these. After all, what is our experience of life? We see, hear, smell, taste, touch. We perform actions. We think thoughts. We have emotions, perceptions. All together is what I call my personal life. All of this, the Rishi is asking, what is at the source of this? Notice the interesting thing about the question. It is asking what is one thing from which they have all come. And the answer is equally profound. This question, thousands of years ago in the Kena Upanishad, today itself, neuroscientists, philosophers of mind, they are asking this question. They call it the hard problem of consciousness. That quite apart from the physical body, quite apart from the neuroscience, the neurological processes going on in the brain, what is it that gives us this first person experience? The direct feeling, the experience of living, of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. How does a physical thing like a brain, how does a physical processes like neurochemical processes in our neurons, how do they suddenly become subjective, directly experienced and felt? So the so-called hard problem of consciousness is the problem that the rishis asked, the question they asked thousands of years ago. And the answer they found was very profound. The answer they found, the next verse, next mantra in the Kena Upanishad, Shrotrasya Shrotram Manaso Mano Yat Vachoha Vacham Sau Pranasya Pranaha Chakshusas Chakshur Atimuchya Dhira Pretyasmad Lokad Amrita Bhavanti. It says, what you are asking for, by what we have the experience of hearing, by what we have the experience of seeing, it is by the ear of the ear, it is by the eye of the eye. What you're asking is the eye of the eye, the ear of the ear, the speech of the speech, the mind of the mind, and so on. Now, what a strange answer. They, of course, mean the consciousness which is illumining all these activities, but why are they giving the answer in that way? Why not just say consciousness? Why not just say Atma or Brahman or something like that? The reason is, the moment something else is mentioned, what is illumining our vision, our hearing, our thoughts? If you say something like pure consciousness, Atma, Brahman, we'll start looking for that. Start looking for a thing called Atma or Brahman, some kind of entity. But the one who is looking, I myself right now, I am that Atman. The skillful teacher will try to point out the answer, not just give a term. So the way to point out the answer is look at your experience of looking, hearing, smelling, tasting, talking, thinking, all activities, all perceptions, all internal mentations. Look at that. There itself you will find the answer. It is like if you ask, here is a bulb, here is a fan, here is a telephone, mobile. What is it? In the shop they were inactive, but when you come and you plug them and you charge them, suddenly they start becoming active. The bulb starts giving light, the fan starts giving air, blowing air, the phone starts ringing and you can talk, laptop starts working, you can use it for your communication and work. What got into these inert, unmoving machines and started doing multiple activities? Each machine is doing the activity it was designed for, but something got into it. One thing got into it. We know the answer, it's electricity. So it's a good example. One thing which is different from the machine, different from the bulb or the fan or the mobile, electricity, goes in there, pervades it, and then each instrument does what it was designed to do because of the presence of that electricity. Now, that's an example. The answer here is there is this one reality, consciousness itself, which is our own self. In Vedanta, Atma or consciousness, Chaitanya, Atma, Chit are used interchangeably, our own real nature. So this consciousness illumines our body-mind complex. And illumined by this consciousness, the eyes, the organs and the nerves and up to the brain center, and then to the mind itself, the entire process of seeing now becomes illumined and you get the experience of seeing. And this is, you now say, I am seeing, aham pashyami. Notice a very subtle point here. Today we are in the age of intelligent machines. These machines, robots, sensors powered by AI, they can do almost everything that this body mind can do. See, when you go near an airport and an airport door, the door opens for you. Nobody is opening it, automatically opens. A simple sensor is there, a simple device which opens it. In one sense, it is seeing you. A self-driving robot car, very sophisticated. In one sense, it can see, it can sense the presence of other obstacles. It can make decisions quickly and execute them also. So intelligent machines are there. How is the seeing of a robot or a sensor different from our seeing? Here is the difference. That activity is entirely insentient and it is mechanical. An engineer can tell you in detail what is happening there. And there is nothing more to it than that. No engineer, no computer scientist, no matter how ambitious, will ever claim that my intelligent machine, sensor, AI powered robot is conscious. Because nothing in the programming, nothing in the machinery has been made to make it conscious. But in our case, we are like organic machines. These bodies are like organic machines. Everything is mechanical here. Eyes, brain, up to the brain. But after that, some magic happens. The entire process of seeing becomes a conscious process. It is revealed to us directly. That conscious experience is not there in the sensor. That conscious experience is not there in the robot or in the self-driving car. That conscious experience of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, that is what the Upanishad, the Rishi is asking. And the answer is that there is one entity which we call consciousness, Chaitanya, which is illumining all of these activities. And therefore, what is simply a mechanical activity of an organic machine that becomes a conscious presence and activity. And this consciousness is not produced by that machine. So materialist reductionist would say brain is producing consciousness. Here is with Upanishads differ. We say that consciousness is independent. It, in association with body mind, it gives us conscious experiences, seeing, hearing, talking, and thinking, and all of that. But it is not produced. Consciousness is not produced by the brain. It acts in and through the brain, through the nervous system, through the body mind. And it transcends them. Atimucya, it says, the Upanishad says, it transcends. In the presence of the body mind, you get these conscious experiences. Suppose the body dies, materialist would say, reductive materialist would say, once the body is dead, once the brain and the nervous system are dead, there is no more consciousness. What the Upanishads, what Vedanta says is that once the machinery is dead, it does not mean that electricity has disappeared. It does not mean consciousness has disappeared. Once again, if you have a living machinery which can interact and produce these experiences, consciousness will illumine that also. So consciousness transcends the body mind. Body mind changing, consciousness unchanging. Someone may ask, we keep saying Atma is unchanging, consciousness is unchanging. What is the proof? Suppose consciousness is changing. See, for asserting anything, you need an epistemological proof. That means the question will be, how do you know XYZ? How do you know? If you say consciousness is, if you say something is changing, in the body is changing, I'm raising my hand, lowering my hand. If I make this statement, if you ask, how do you know? See, you can see it. If I say that I have a happy thought in my mind, I feel happy. If you ask, how do I know? I know it internally through introspection. The feeling is clear to me. So, how do you know? Now, body is changing, we can see. Mind is changing, we can directly experience. Consciousness is changing, how will you know? If it is possible for consciousness to change, just for the sake of argument, if we say consciousness itself to change in some way, then the change should be noted. If the change is not known, if it's not noted, there's no use speaking about it. But if it is noted, if it is known, then it is not consciousness. It becomes an object to consciousness. You see, this is a very interesting thing. To be known, to be an object of knowledge, it must become an object of consciousness, must become an object to consciousness. So a change in the body is an object to consciousness, no problem. We have that all the time. Change in the mind is an object to consciousness, no problem. Every time we look inside, we can see changing thoughts and feelings. But change in consciousness, if it becomes an object, it is no longer consciousness, it's an object. If it is in consciousness and not an object, and after that, if you say that no, it changes, but we cannot know it, that is a meaningless statement. If it cannot be known, why say it at all? So, by logic, we come to this understanding consciousness itself. By consciousness itself, pure consciousness, consciousness itself, Chaitanyam, we mean the same thing. So, this is not a concept understood clearly yet in the Western philosophy of mind, in the modern philosophy of mind and neuroscience. In neuroscience, mind and consciousness are used interchangeably, and they are always changing. The idea is that consciousness changes, transformation of consciousness, elevation of consciousness, different conscious states. Vedanta would say no, transformation of body mind, higher mind, lower mind. Change of state, even waking, dreaming, deep sleep. Vedanta talks about 3 states of consciousness. No. Vedanta talks about consciousness illumining 3 states of the mind. Waking, dreaming, deep sleep are states of the mind, not of consciousness. Consciousness does not have states. The consciousness in its ultimate nature, which Vedanta speaks about. So this unchanging luminosity, which we have within ourselves, which is discovered this way. And the Vedanta gives multiple processes for discovering this. Drigdrishya Viveka, where you see whatever you see is an object and you, the seer, are the subject. And when you apply it, world is an object, the eyes are the subject. Eyes are the object, mind is the subject. Mind is the object, and I, consciousness, am the subject. But the consciousness never becomes an object. Consciousness is ever the pure subject. Drigdrishya Viveka. Another method is Panchakosha Viveka. You look at your own body mind. See, Upanishads are like very skillful teachers. They take us from what is absolutely obvious and known to us into more subtle thoughts. So take this very body mind. When we say, who are you? The investigation is, what am I? The first answer is here, this body. Upanishad says, start with that. Vedanta says, start with that. You start with the body. And body is called Annamaya Kosha because it is a modification of Annam or food. And we are shown philosophically how we cannot be the body. Changing body, but I feel an identity, unchanging identity. Changing and unchanging cannot be the same thing. Body is an object. I am a subject. Subject and object cannot be the same thing. Drigdrishya, so I cannot be the body. Body is insentient. I am aware of the body. Body is not aware of me, the self. So the chit and jara, the two cannot be the same thing. Because I am unchanging and the body is changing, I cannot be the body. Because I am the witness subject and the body is an object, then I cannot be the body. Because I am conscious and the body is something I'm conscious of, it's an inert thing, I cannot be the body. And there are many such reasonings. And that shows the Panchakosha Viveka says, this is why you are not the body. Similarly, the prana, you are not the prana, which is subtler than the body. Go further inside, more subtle, the mind, for same reason, changing, unchanging, subject and object, chit and jada. For these reasons, I cannot be the stream of thoughts called the mind. Go further inwards, the buddhi, the intellect, which we are using just now to understand all this, that is also changing all the time. That is also an object of our awareness. That is also not chit, it is jada. See, here already we are very far ahead of contemporary philosophy of mind, because at the level of mind and intellect, manas and buddhi, this is exactly what contemporary philosophers of mind say, that this is consciousness. Vedanta says, no, this is not consciousness. Vedanta has a very elegant way of differentiating between consciousness and not consciousness. The knife by which you make this cut, the criterion by make this differentiation is, if it can be experienced, if it is an object, then it is not consciousness. Whatever is an object is not consciousness. Body, object, because I can see it. Prana, breathing in, breathing out, object. I can experience it. Thoughts, I can experience them, object. Even intellect, I can experience, understanding, not understanding, object. Up to intellect, Vijnanamaya Kosha, object, not consciousness. Beyond that, if you push, you come to a blankness, which you experience in deep sleep. That is called the Anandamaya Kosha. That is also an object. So the witness consciousness of these 5 objects, Pancha Kosha, Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya, these 5 components of the human personality, which we thought we were. Vedanta shows you are not that. This is another way of showing it. So in different ways, and another way is Avasthatraya Vichara, in which waking, dreaming, and deep sleep are examined to show that we are the witness of these 3 states which come and go. Conclusion is always the same, that you are this unchanging luminosity, call it Chaitanya, Chit, Atma, Turiya, different names are used, with this consciousness, unchanging. If it is unchanging, then it must be immortal, because change and death are synonymous. So this immortal luminosity, that is our real nature, and we put on coverings, body, mind. Body, mind are like instruments. Now a question arises, that I am this luminous consciousness within. So this luminous consciousness, this is in fact what Swami Vivekananda said, divinity within us. So the first question we had was, What do you mean by divinity? It's a cool term, it's a nice term, but what exactly is specifically what is meant? It is this unchanging luminosity, this pure consciousness within us, which is what is, when Swami Vivekananda says divinity within us, it is that. Now the question will arise, all right, so there is this consciousness which I am, not body, not mind. But so many bodies and minds are there. How many such consciousnesses are there? Are there many such consciousnesses, or is it one? And Vedanta answers in no uncertain terms. It is one. In all bodies and minds, not only human, in all sentient creatures, human and animal, there is one consciousness. In the Bhagavad Gita, 13th chapter, Sri Krishna says, Kshetragyam chabimam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. In all body mind complexes, kshetra, know me alone to be the one consciousness, one witness. There's only one consciousness in all bodies and minds. And by the way, this is the Vedantic conception of God, the one consciousness shining in all bodies and minds. Swami Vivekananda said, the sum total of human souls is the only God that I know. That in all of us, there's one entity which is shining through, immanent in all beings, not just human beings, all sentient beings. Consciousness is one. Now, there are a lot of arguments about this. Nyaya philosophy, Sankhya, many systems of philosophy, they say, yes, we have consciousness. Sankhya says we are pure consciousness. Nyaya says we are the Atman, not body mind. But there are many selves, many consciousnesses. Why are you saying there's only one consciousness? And Vedanta turns the question around. Vedanta asks the question, why do you think there are many consciousnesses? See, question is this. If someone asks, why do you think there are many bodies? They take a census, count, roll call. You will see many, you can immediately count. Are minds many or one? Minds are also many. If you ask questions, same question, different people will give different answers. Different people have different opinions, different tastes, so which shows the inside each body, the mind is also different. Personalities are different. But we have already seen that consciousness is not body, not mind. Beyond the differences of body, beyond the differences of mind, for what reason will you differentiate in consciousness? What is the criterion for differentiating one consciousness from another? Every difference that you feel is explained by body or mind. So Sankhyan, for example, the Sankhyan philosopher raises objection. No, consciousness must be different. If all consciousness were the same, one consciousness, then when one person falls asleep, everybody would fall asleep. When one person wakes up, everybody would wake up. But that's not true. The Vedanta's answer is that that question is not valid, because waking and dreaming depend on the mind, not on consciousness. So here is a sleeping person, means body and mind are sleeping. Consciousness is illumining the sleeping body mind there. Here is a person who's awake, which means body and mind are in the waking state. So consciousness is illumining the waking mind in this place. Same consciousness can do both. In every body and mind, whatever the state of the body and mind, that is illumined by the consciousness. Why are you saying consciousness is different? Another objection would be, no, if consciousness were the same, wouldn't the death of one person be experienced as the death of all? Wouldn't the birth of one person be the birth of all? That objection also does not stand, because birth and death are of the body, not of consciousness. So the birth of one body will be experienced as birth there and there in that body. The death of another body will be experienced as death there in that dying body. But consciousness does not have to be two different. Consciousness is not born, consciousness is not dying. So it is one consciousness. Another objection would be, no, in that case, the enlightenment of your guru would be the enlightenment of the students. One person gets enlightenment, jnana, and everybody would become jivan mukta. No. Ignorance and enlightenment are unique to each mind. So ignorance is in the mind, knowledge comes in the mind and removes the ignorance in the mind. Enlightenment takes place there. Consciousness itself, the Atman itself, is neither in ignorance nor is it enlightened. It is always the same. It's always free, always shining. So it reveals the ignorance in the ignorant person's mind, and there it says, I don't understand. And when knowledge comes, there it reveals the knowledge in the knowledgeable person's mind and says, I understand now. I get it now. So consciousness is one in all beings, same, one and the same in all beings. Kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. O Arjuna, know me to be the one witness consciousness, knower of the field in all fields, all bodies and minds. Still, a question remains. Even if consciousness is one, but bodies are many, you have just said, minds are many, you have just said, and in the world there are billions of entities, little from tiniest particles to stars and quasars, so many things are there. So this Advaita speaks about non-duality. How is non-duality achieved? Consciousness is one, but other than consciousness, millions of entities are there. So there Vedanta pushes the investigation further. What is the relationship between consciousness and its objects? What is the relationship between subject and object? The materialist says that the consciousness is born of matter. Matter becoming a complex human body or complex bodies with brains and nervous systems somehow generates consciousness. That is materialism. Theistic religions say consciousness generates matter. When God produces the universe, God is consciousness, so God produces the universe. So the universe is produced from consciousness. Another philosophy, Sankhya, says consciousness is fundamental, matter is also fundamental. Neither produces the other. They interact, but they are parallel existences. Prakriti Purusha. And now here, right here in New York University, David Chalmers, who is in the mind brain consciousness unit at NYU, he is propounding panpsychism, that consciousness is a fundamental reality of the universe, together with matter and energy, time and space. This idea is very ancient, a Sankhyan idea that consciousness is fundamental. Matter is also, nature is fundamental and consciousness is fundamental. But the Advaitic theory is that it is not that matter produces consciousness. It is not that consciousness produces matter. It is not that two fundamental realities are there, matter and consciousness interacting. Rather, matter is an appearance in consciousness. The object is an appearance in the subject. It is not different from the subject. Just as a wave appears in water without being different from the water, just as the gold ornaments appear in gold without being different from the gold. Pots are names and forms imposed on clay. No pot is different from its constituent clay. Similarly, the objects experienced in consciousness cannot be different from the experiencing consciousness. Now, this is not subjective idealism, a Berkeleyan type of idealism or the Buddhist Yogacara Vijnanavada kind of idealism, which is saying that the mind is imagining the world. No, Vedanta does not say that. Vedanta says both mind and world, subject and object, are appearances in consciousness. In Vivekananda's language, one alone exists. It appears as nature, soul. One alone, consciousness alone exists. It appears as subject and object. You, the knower, and whatever you know, both are appearances in one consciousness. Which means the entire universe of experience is an appearance in a fundamental consciousness. We are not saying it is an imagination of the mind. Many people think, so this whole world, are you saying it is, I am imagining it? No, no, no. Vedanta says, you and your world are both appearances in this consciousness called the Atman or Brahman. Thus is non-duality established. A variety of the entities in the world exist. Bodies and minds exist. Persons exist. Animals and plants exist. Planets and stars exist. But they are all appearances in one underlying identity. So this is the deep oneness of the universe. Everything that we experience is grounded in consciousness, is nothing but consciousness. So that one luminosity, and Abhinava Gupta's beautiful terms, great Kashmiri philosopher, Prakasham Prakashate, light alone is shining, consciousness alone is shining. What is the shining of consciousness? This universe that we experience. Oneness is established. The non-duality of consciousness, the non-duality of Atman, Brahman, Turiya or Chaitanya. Other than that, everything appears, but they are not fundamentally other than that. They are not a countably second entity. No second entity, non-dual. Non-dual is equal to Advaitam. So consciousness is Advaitam. Now comes the grand conclusion. If consciousness is Advaitam, what happens to this universe? What happens to me? Everything continues to appear the way it is, but our whole vision is changed. Swami Vivekananda says that then alone true love will come. The husband will love the wife more by seeing God in the wife. The wife will love the husband more by seeing God in the husband. The friend will love the friend more by seeing God in the friend. Even so-called enemy, you will be able to love the enemy by seeing God in that enemy. Swami Vivekananda says the utility of this philosophy is that then alone fear will go. When gods will play with gods, when gods will work with gods, when gods will love gods, the whole world, this world will become a veritable heaven. So this is the great utility of this philosophy. Direct consequence is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. This Vasudha, this multifarious world will still appear to the Jivan Mukta. The difference between knowledge and ignorance is what is in ignorance appearing to be an other source of fear, anxiety, and terror. From the point of the enlightened person, it is all I. They are all mine, they are all one with me. So Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam knows the differences, but in all differences perceives the unity. So they are all relatives. Relatives in what family? The family of consciousness, the family of Brahman. There is a non-duality, and when the non-duality is expressed in diversity, the diversity remains, there's underlying identity. So we can honestly say Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the entire universe is one family. That is the great consequence. The result of this will be great love for others. The result of this will be a life of service towards others. You see this amazing divinity in all beings. Then what will be our response? Our response will be love. Our response will be service. There will be no fear. So this is the deep meaning of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And the Upanishad says, once you realize this is called Esha Brahmi Sthiti. This is the same language Krishna quotes in the Bhagavad Gita at the end of second chapter. Esha Brahmi Sthiti Partha. Nainam Prapya Vimuhyati. After attaining this, Chittvasyam Antakale api. Even if for one moment you see this, you realize this, at the point of death of the body also, one becomes liberated. After this, you cannot go back to the state of ignorance. You don't have to practice anything. It's effortless, permanently done. This is called Brahmi Sthiti, the absolute state. The state of Brahman is the absolute state. Living in this, one gets this Udara Charita. The Upanishad says Udara Charita is liberal not in political sense, liberal in a spiritual sense. Everybody is one's own. Nobody is an enemy. Whom to praise, whom to blame, when praiser and praised, blamer and blamed are but one. Where is my enemy? Where is the one whom I am to hate? Where is the one I am to be contemptuous of? It's impossible to have contempt. Will you have contempt for God? Will you have hatred for God? Impossible. Will you look down upon God? Impossible. Our only attitude can be of marvel and worship towards God manifested in all of these beings. This is at the foundation of Indian civilization. Thousands of years ago, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. In the modern age, when Sri Ramakrishna says, Jato mat tato pat, as many faiths, so many paths to God. This harmony of religions, harmony of different points of view, harmony of different faiths. Not only tolerance, but acceptance. Not only do I tolerate others to exist, do you say that I tolerate my brothers and sisters, my relatives? I tolerate them? No, I accept them. Then only they are my relatives. So Kutumbaka is something that you accept in love and a deep sense of identity and oneness. The oneness is not homogeneity. You're not saying that everybody has to become like me. Everybody has to think like me. Everybody has to dress and wear the same dress and talk in the same language, follow the same religion as me. Not at all. The relatives, you can enjoy your relatives more when they are diverse. There are many kinds and many points of view, but you know you're one with them because they are all your relatives. Similarly, different religions, different points of view, different races, genders, different food habits, languages, and cultures. This is the richness of Brahman, and you enjoy this because you know at the deepest level you are one with everybody and everything. So we pray to the Lord, may this realization dawn upon us in this very lifetime. May our lives be blessed. May we be a blessing to our surroundings and to the people around us. I once again thank the organizers of the Shankara Vyakhyana Mala for giving me this opportunity. And I pray to the Lord to bless all of us. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.